everyone, and welcome back to the Sounds of Stadia podcast for episode number 150 of your weekly Stadia podcast, where we round up all of the Google Stadia and cloud gaming news for your listening or viewing pleasure right here on youtube.com/Helix Cloud Games, or up there in the digital clouds on your podcast preference of choice. You're joining me this week, Chris, alongside my man of many pixels, Mr. Richie. Welcome back to the show.
Hello, everyone.
Hello, everyone. We've got a great show lined up for you all this week, you lovely, beautiful YouTube listeners and podcast listeners out there. We're going to be discussing all of the next up on Stadia games from this week's community blog, discussing rumours of a new EA game working on none other than Iron Man, unofficial rumours from Forbes about Madden23 possibly coming to Google Stadia, a bunch of new titles, many coming in the years to come from Kelly Carson Games, and much more promotions. And all that aside, we do have a great show lined up for you, for this is the 150th episode, Richie. 150. Let's quote the Pokemon rap. At least 150 or more to see. To be a Stadia master is your destiny. That's right. 150 episodes lined up for your listening or viewing pleasure. How does it feel,
honestly
Richie?
Thought for a moment there that you were going to go, we're going to sing the Pokemon rap, go.
Just off the top of your head. 150. No, I'm not going to do it.
50. Oh,
You were going to do it. Get the guitar off the wall, Richie. Let's do it now. I'm only joking, of course. Pokemon rap, fantastic. One of the best songs of all time. Better than Eminem when it comes to rapping.
It actually isn't. It's literally just a guy going, Mewtwo, Meowth, Pikachu.
Bulbasaur, Pikachu.
It's
Had a
just
P.
like,
Well,
it's just-
yeah. It was. But you know what? It made my evenings after school much more
Oh, yeah, I
lighter.
love it.
So, got to catch them all. 150 episodes of your weekly Stadia podcast, the longest running Stadia podcast in the world. Richie, how does it feel like being a podcast host of a show that's had 150 consistent episodes?
I don't know, because it's
unprecedented.
because we've done 150 episodes. Like, this part, it just Sounds of Stadia is now, it's just part of my life. It's part of my routine. So that, I think it was bigger getting to 100 than 150. I think that felt a bit more because in that triple digits, but it's mad that we've been doing this for almost 3 years.
Yep, anniversary is on the horizon. Of course, 150 is a milestone. Although we all know there was secretly 151 Pokemon, so maybe we'll do something different next week.
Use strength on the truck near the same, and then you can get the Mew.
Well, there's some nerdy chatter for you all up there. But you know what? It's 150 episodes. If you'd have told us we'd have got to 50 at the beginning, I'd have probably been surprised. If you told us we'd have got to 100, even more surprised. And here we are, 150, as you said, weeks consistent every Monday on youtube.com/Helix Cloud Games, or on your podcast preferences. If you do listen along on podcast services, don't forget to give us a rating if you can do so. Spotify and Apple, I think, allow you to leave reviews and star ratings, so we do appreciate that. And of course, our beautiful, our wonderful, our fantastic Stadia trainers and gym leaders out there, the wonderful Helix heroes who do keep us ticking over with your fantastic additional support and patronage. We do love you all so much. From as little as 99p, we do give you perks, early access to CloudQuest and Talking the PS and all of our wonderful content, but we know you only do it because you love the work that we do, and we really do appreciate it, because you don't have to give us any of your hard-earned money, but it does kind of make us smile a little bit. 150, over 50 of you. You can have 3 episodes apiece. Take your pick. They're all out there on YouTube. Claim them. Keep them forever. Download them using YouTube Premium, if you have that. Anyway, Richie, we do have a terrific show lined up for the viewers and listeners out there who've stuck with us so far on the journey. And I promise we'll stop dropping Pokemon references into a Google Stadia podcast at some point. But
probably 152.
Maybe. But yes, we have got some great content available on the channel. We've got plenty to talk about on this particular week's show. And I think we should probably get into it, don't you, Richie? By introducing us to
the super sexy special Stadia story segment, aka The News.
For the 150th time. This week, kicking things off, we had a Next Up on Stadia blog after the big breakout blog of your pro games for the month of August. Hope you're all enjoying your pro games, by the way. Some good little indie titles out there. Everyone tripping balls over Calico and running around in Saints Row with, of course, the aforementioned dildo bats. Slight deviation from Pokemon and PG child-friendly conversation there. A couple of games were confirmed. We actually we did break the news on the podcast last week about this game, the Dungeons of Nahulbeok. is now confirmed. The Amulet of Chaos, I should say. Give it its full name, Chris. Come on. What are you doing? No disrespect to the Dungeon of... I can't even say it.
Nahulbuke.
Yeah, we actually recorded our show last week on Friday, and then we saw it being picked up by loads of Stadia people across the weekend, and it was like, our show doesn't go live till Monday, so it was, I think I texted you a screenshot of some Twitter pages picking up on it, and it was like, oh, damn it. We talked about
It's always the problem. It's been the problem since day one for our recording schedule.
Yeah, one day we'll do it live. We'll probably do episode 200 live. But either way, nonetheless, Community Stadia blog released breaking down the dungeon of whatever it's called. From Artifact Studios, publisher Dear Villages, step into the wacky, heroic fantasy universe of the Dungeons of Nahulbuke. Lead a team of unlikely and clumsy heroes in an epic adventure of challenging tactical RPGness. Live an adventure filled with humour, surprises, and silly encounters. The Nahulbuke universe is an original creation by French author John Lang. It started a very popular audio comedy series parodying role-playing games and heroic fantasy tropes. Now, the story is available in English and as a video game for the first time. So it sounds like this has kind of gone full circle. It started off as a telling of a fantasy heroic world, and then now it's a game, which in turn is looping back around to create a story. So it includes 7 classic role-playing characters, each with a combination of different skills. The ranger, the elf, the dwarf, the barbarian, the magician, the ogre, and the thief. Every member of the team has their own skill tree to upgrade with their abilities and equipment. Choose one of 3 additional companions to join on your adventure. Epic battles, 1 dreadful dungeon, and then a huge puzzle-filled world to explore, looking for treasure and new experiences to be had, along with side quests and a fantastic main story for your heroes to enjoy. Richie, we watched the trailer this last week. We're quite impressed with what we've seen. Now we know a little bit more about the game, and it is genuinely coming to Stadia, which, I mean, it was on the artwork last week, which is what we knew about before they took it down. For me, this one seems up your street.
Yeah, the game looks like a cross between, what do you call it, Divinity Original Sin and Magicka. Did you ever play Magicka when that came out?
Yes, I did. Yeah.
Like, you played as little wizards. Like, it had very slapstick. It didn't take itself seriously at all.
Yeah.
Banana. Yeah. But yeah, I think this actually looks really quite fun. Like, for a smaller title, I must admit, it's been a while since like a smaller game has come to Stadia through Stadia Pro, which I'm hoping this is going to be a Stadia Pro game. Mm-hmm. That's got me actually going, you know what? I actually really need to play that. Like, despite having a huge backlog of like AAA titles, like this I might actually spend some time in here.
Yeah, it's definitely got a fun art style. It doesn't lean too much into the heavy Fortnite aesthetic, and with it kind of having that isometric, top-down Diablo almost approach, I think it works quite well for the type of game it's trying to be. Loads of heroes, loads of action adventure, and it's very interesting how an art style and a couple of visual aids can make you really just show a little bit more interest into a title than you would otherwise for some others potentially. But yeah, coming soon is what it says according to the community blog, so hopefully not too far off. Usually when we get some coming soon announcements, they generally trickle out within a month or two of it being announced, so maybe not too much longer to wait. Following on from that, we also had an update from Space, from Triangle Studios and Curve Games. We've been following this one for some time. We have, of course, we've played It Came From Space and Ate Our Brains. There's a first look up on the channel of the From Space demo that was available to play on Stadia for a few months back at the beginning of the year. And it's got a release date of autumn 2022. So for those who are not familiar with From Space, it's a solo and co-op action shooter for squads of up to 4 players. Take on the challenge of liberating the Earth from an alien infestation with your friends using over-the-top weaponry in a post-apocalyptic world with some awesomely stylized graphics. The apocalypse has never been so much fun. There's no bubblegum army, an endless horde of maniacally pink aliens taking over our planet. Squad up, shoot, explode, and stab. Pick up some specials. Don't just stand there, level up, and have fun in the apocalypse. Richie, this game was fun when we played the demo. It's obviously been put back in the oven for quite some time. They've done a lot of tweaks and changes. And I'm looking forward to this game. I love a good twin-stick shooter in spirit of Dead Nation or... what was it called? I forgot it. Reminds me of Starship Troopers. Helldivers. I got there eventually. From Space, are you excited for this one?
I'm not as excited as what do you call it, Dungeon of Nahulbuke, but I think this is one where on stream, I'd have a blast playing with you in the community.
Mm-hmm.
Probably won't jump in on my own though.
Yeah, I had loads of fun with It Came From Space and Ate Our Brains on mobile, playing it with my Razer Kishi, actually. And what I do like about from what we've seen from the demo is they've added a lot more to it. So the enemy variety seems to have increased. The character models for the main protagonists are way, way more detailed. I think if you remember originally, they were almost like Lego Duplo characters, where it was very basic kind of eyebrows, eyes, and skin palette with a very basic uniform on, whereas the characters now look like they've actually got facial hair features, different characteristics. Their clothing is actually unique to the character, as is the weaponry. Whereas I just think, again, more polish, more time, more details gone into making the quality of the game look a lot better than it did in the demo. Obviously, understandably.
Yeah, I don't think it's a bad way to do it. If you're a smaller developer, just go, he's one level of the game as a concept, put out there, take on the feedback and go, okay, now we know where we need to tweak this game to make it a success.
Yeah. It looks like they've added in a few more story elements as well to kind of thicken out what happened to create this apocalypse and who this unique squadron team are who are going to go in to deal with it. But as you said, fun with the community, a lot more detail and stuff added to it, and it's got an autumn release, so of course autumn is on the horizon. Summer is unfortunately on its way out. Who'd have thought we're already beyond midway through the year, so look forward to that one soon. Will it be a pro game? I suspect it may be. It may quite be.
I've got a feeling all the games we're talking about in this segment might be pro games.
Yes, I have a sneaky suspicion as well. The final one on this week's community blog was, of course, Outbreak Contagious Memories. Some of you will have seen this across Twitter, as the developer and publisher Dead Drop Studios has been quite vocal about bringing this title and potentially some of his other titles to Stadia. I think we looked at Steam originally, Richie, and there was about 4, 5, 6 different variations of the Outbreak series, going back a few years, available on Steam, and heavily inspired, of course, by the classic Resident Evil 90s horror-style game. Outbreak Contagious Memories is a chilling love letter where your survival will be determined by moment-to-moment decisions, what you decide to carry, and how good you are at spotting conveniently written notes. You're trapped in a city ravaged by the undead. Can you make it out alive? Join Lydia in her desperate struggle to escape, either alone or with a friend in co-op play, with plenty of unlockable content like Operation Rabid Wolf. Work with your friends or compete against them, whether it's fighting through the city to rescue survivors or beat the main game in a record time with nothing but your fists. Features include classic survival horror mechanics, inventory and resource management, conveniently written and placed notes, backtracking and puzzles, aka Resident Evil, full co-op integration, and integrate camera controls between first person, third person, and your classic fixed camera angle, hordes of undead beasts, mutations and monsters with lots of extra teeth, and voice acting that's almost as cheesy enough to put in a sandwich, according to the blog post.
Yeah, it's a love letter to Resident Evil, basically.
It is, essentially.
I like how they're acknowledging the good elements and the bad elements of the original Resident Evil.
Mm-hmm.
There's going to be some sort of equivalent to the Jill sandwich moment.
Oh, yes. Definitely got that in there. Of course, Dead Drop Studios. He's been over on Twitter quite a lot over probably the last year and a half, I would say, maybe. He pops up on my newsfeed all the time. Promoting the game, asking bring it to Stadia, all that kind of stuff, and he's finally got his moment in the sunshine, coming across to Google Stadia, and we probably won't have to wait too long. Probably again, big chance of it being a pro game. Would you feel?
Yeah, I think so. It's one of them with the nature of he's kind of led the campaign himself to bring it to Stadia. It feels like he wants to get this game in as many hands as possible, and the best way to do that on Stadia is to make it a pro game.
Yeah.
And Stadia have obviously engaged with him at some point. So,
well, I think if memory serves, he reached out through the what was it called, Stadia Makers program in someone, maybe not the Stadia Makers. It was one of the Stadia programs. Caught my eye, but if you head over to his Twitter account, obviously plenty of promotion going out there. Now he wants to bring Outbreak Shades of Horror, his next-gen exclusive game. It's on Kickstarter. It's coming soon, to Kickstarter, and naturally he's already tweeting out about Stadia, PS5, Xbox, and Steam. So it looks like he's completely happy with the porting process over to Google Stadia as an indie dev team, and more power to him.
Yeah.
Looking forward to it.
I think it's one of them. If you're a Resident Evil fan, games in the style of the original Resident Evil games are actually few and far between. So this might not have the same level of polish you'd expect from like a Resident Evil Village. Mm-hmm. It probably will scratch that same itch.
Yeah, probably a couple of jump scares in there, as it says in the brief description. Puzzle solving and mutants to kill, or zombies to kill, I guess, undead, whatever you want to refer to them as. But yeah, so blog post there this week giving us some updates on some future games. That last one mentioned is coming soon as the release date. I don't know why they put a release date and then : coming soon, because it's not a release date then if you don't have a date associated to it. It's just coming soon, which inevitably is what most games are doing until they get a release date. So either way, just a little nitpick from me there. I deserve it after 150 episodes covering the topics. Next
because
up,
you've never nitpicked Stadia before.
Never. I'm an absolute hardened, die-hard fanboy of the platform. So either way, next up, Richie, big story potentially of the week coming from EA once again. We covered it on last week's show regarding a Black Panther single-player game in the works at EA. This week, coming from the same leak source, Jeff Grubb over on his weekly gaming podcast, it may appear that there is also an Iron Man game in the works. Reporting from Eurogamer this time, Jeff Grubb reported in his show that EA is making that Black Panther game we spoke about, and it's making another Marvel game that's single player. And that was since kind of mutually corroborated with... Is corroborated the right word? Corroborated? Yeah, I think so. Where you kind of share sources and pair them together. Tom Henderson, another well-known news journalist out there, tweeted out saying, "I've heard rumours that it's Iron Man, but I never had anything concrete to report on it. But this puts it heavily under the rumour category for now, as more information comes out. So it's worth mentioning that it still is a big rumour, but of course, if you've got two industry journalist veterans kind of both citing similar sources, and usually there's no smoke without fire, and after Black Panther, it seems to be that EA and Disney may be having some conversations about more of their fantastic IP making their way to the video game realm once again. And Richard, we spoke about it on Talking the PS this week with our lovely co-host Rob. If you want to check out all of our thoughts around this story, definitely go check out that. It goes live tomorrow on free feeds at the time of this going live on a Monday. But Richie, Iron Man. Obviously, fantastic tentpole flagship hero of the MCU with Robert Downey Jr. portrayal. He's basically gone from a fairly unknown comic book hero to one of the most visual, iconic superheroes in the world. Well,
I don't think Iron Man was never unknown, but he was kind of B tier.
Did you know who he was?
Yeah, I knew. I watched it. Yeah, I'd seen the Spider-Man cartoon show in the 90s. Iron Man, isn't it?
I had no clue.
So. Yeah, so I think he was one of them. He's a B tier. He's not like. Well, I think the Guardians were completely unknown outside comic book fans. Iron Man was in that kind of tier of Marvel superhero where I think a lot of people heard of him, but he's not getting his own TV show in the 90s.
Certainly not. But of course, we've had Iron Man games before. We had Iron Man VR for PlayStation VR, came out 2 or so years ago. We also had, there was an Iron Man game on PS3 by Sega, I want to say. We had Iron Man, Thor, and a Captain America game back in the day. And I never got to play them, but I think they were kind of movie tie-in games from Sega. So I don't know how good they were received, but evidently tie-in games are tie-in games after all. But here we are in 2022 with the likes of Insomniac Spider-Man doing phenomenally well. And of course the MCU and superhero movies just seemingly never ending and never dying. And now we're getting TV shows as well. Of course, Robert Downey Jr. has since put down the mantle of playing Tony Stark. And what that's possibly done is opened up the world for maybe embracing a new look or a new style or new stories from Iron Man's world, whether that be comic book or inspired by the MCU. Give us your first initial thoughts, Richard, on what you'd like to see out of an Iron Man game. Obviously, it would have to be third person, you'd like to think, because they've done the VR thing now. So another Iron Man game in first person, I think, is losing quite a lot of what Iron Man's about if you can't see the suit.
Yeah, well, I think Insomniac have set a benchmark for the quality of these games need to be reaching for. I'm less optimistic on this one than I am for Black Panther, because I literally called out when we were talking about Black Panther last week, I called out that Black Panther feels like an easier fit adaptation to a video game than Iron Man. Because Iron Man, it's the traversal, the moving throughout the world has to be fully in 3 dimensions, and that has to feel good to play as. And I think that's a harder task to do with Iron Man than it is Spider-Man, than it is Black Panther.
Yeah, you don't have as much momentum in the suit, because I think Rob was saying, talking to PS, like you're almost on rails. As soon as you're in the air flying, you essentially move left to right, up and down, like you are limited.
But it needs to feel, you need to feel like you got the maneuverability of how Iron Man would be in a combat situation. Where with Spider-Man, you got, a lot of it is about how the swing feels, but you have that anchor point. You're always anchoring to something. You don't have an anchor point with Iron Man. It's completely, you can move in any direction.
Yeah.
So, and you don't want this whole thing where you just kind of lock onto a target and you hover and you shoot at that target, then you move and shoot at the next one, because that's a bit dated, that sort of game.
Yeah, it's very Star Fox on your rails, like Panzer Dragoon style. Like I think it could be fun for certain cutscene moments, but for the most part, you got to wonder how this will play from a story point of view, because you're right. Yeah, if flying is a big part of what makes Iron Man, but the flying portion of the game has to be fun. We know EA had practice with Anthem. The flying around in the suits in Anthem was actually one of the better aspects of that game. I know you played. I remember watching you play the demo of Anthem, actually.
It was bland.
But I remember you doing the flying parts and taking off from the ground. The landing, the animations for the takeoff and landing were cool. Were cool as anything. Obviously, we've got a little bit of it in Marvel's Avengers from Square Enix. With the cat.
It needs to be significantly better than that, though. Yeah. Like, significantly. That's fine for the style of game it is. But if it's close to that in terms of if it's closer to Marvel's Avengers, then Insomniac Spider-Man, they've failed. And I think that, like, story-wise and stuff, with the RPG mechanics and story, there's so much you can do with it.
Yeah,
that's the bit I have absolutely faith you'll find a good way of handling this.
Certainly. And I mean, you touched on last week with Black Panther, one of the things you loved to see was the kind of skill tree. You mentioned his kind of suit, then there's the ethereal plane aspect of it, and then him as himself. Whereas with Iron Man, the skill tree kind of writes itself, right? You have a suit literally made up of different weapons and abilities, and you start off with the most basic Mark 1 suit, as he does in the movies. And then as the game progresses, you've got to imagine you get the cool lasers, the arc reactor chest pulse, and just different things all around.
It'd be nice. I think this was Rob's idea, and talking to PS, where one you can like upgrade your suit as you go, but you can also select your loadouts. So you could have different, almost like different suits based on the loadouts. I threw in, it'd be nice to have like a Veronica situation where you could summon in another suit to change up the gameplay as you needed. Yeah. So like the classic example, you got your standard Iron Man, say Mark 42 or something suit, but then you could, if you came up against, I don't know, so the Hulk or Abomination, you could bring in the Hulk Buster. That kind of idea. But yeah, I mean, there's so much you can do. If you're just playing through one suit with just a straight up basic skill tree throughout the entire game, like I expect you would in Black Panther, I think it'd be disappointing. Iron Man, you need to have a range of suits. You need to have a range of suits.
I mean, you can see it already. If you order the EA Deluxe Edition pre-order bonus, you get the game 3 days early, but you also get access to like the Iron Man Infinite suit or the Iron Man movie MCU counterpart suit or or the Infinity Saga suit.
You'll get the bleeding edge one.
Yeah, there'll be loads of stuff they can do in there. And you're right, cosmetics and colour schemes aside, there's a lot to be said with what the potential could be, because again, a very interesting character, very interesting group of villains he's got, and at the end of the day, it's a superhero. Who doesn't want to play as a superhero, fly around a city from point A to point B with all these power-ups? But I think you're onto something there with the kind of calling in the additional kind of additions to the suit. Veronica would be cool. It's like a one-off, once per level kind of perk you have.
It's like an ultimate sort of thing. You can do,
I think I said a must-have mode on the Dynasty Warriors game where you're totally overwhelmed by bad guys or something. You just hit this button and bang, bang, bang comes in all these like extra assets to help you out. Yeah. Or you could even call in some other suits or nanobots or maybe a fellow Avenger.
That's it. Yeah, maybe not an Avenger, but I like the idea of being able to call in another suit. Maybe there's two ways you could do it. You could do it as this is now acting as a drone, so it comes as a companion, or maybe this is a different suit that you could jump into. Yeah. But give the player the choice, because that feels like in Iron Man, it would be in his repertoire. Definitely. Like, he usually keeps, like, Hulkbuster and Veronica, so he can summon it when he needs it.
Yeah.
It's that combination of the lore of the character and the video, how that would translate to a video game mechanic.
Yeah, certainly. One of the things I would love to see with it being single player is that kind of story-driven narrative. When I think of story single-player games, I always default to Naughty Dog as like the go-to experts of that craft.
Yeah,
and I think, right, I need to love Tony Stark's character as Tony Stark. I need to see him in his workshop, in his kind of CEO head office of Stark Industries, interacting with the world around him, and actually fall in love with him as a character. So what happens to him throughout the story, I actually give a shit about. And then obviously the fun element is when he's in the suit and he's been Iron Man. But I want to believe in his relationship with Pepper. I want to believe that the tenuous relationship he has with Ironmonger potentially, or I don't know if Happy might be in it, but I want to create a kind of a group of characters so it's not just about the suit. It's about if you're going to do a single player story, make me buy into the character and believe, just like the MC you did with the Iron Man movies.
Downey Jr. did a fantastic thing of making you care about Tony Stark first, taking him from this like playboy bit of a dickhead to be honest, and then going, by the end of that first film, he's been on that journey, you've been on a journey with him, and then you totally got it's like, because he is a bit of an egoist. Like, I can be a superhero, sod it. Yeah, I am Iron Man.
Yeah, we all can be. Yeah, but I think as far
and
as
then by the time this is Snap, it's like you're like fully on. I like this guy now.
Yeah, completely.
I like who he's become.
And I think single player could go for that. We could also see a lot more about that world because, again, not knowing that much about Iron Man outside of the movies, I'm sure there's loads of villains. We could see the Mandarin fully playing to it correctly. We could have other characters who come back from the movies, but we actually see them fleshed out a little bit more than your typical movie villain. We could see their reasons behind it. We could see what brings them to hate him so much. And depending on what type of game it is you could have interesting boss fights, mechanics. There's so much stuff you can do because, let's face it, at the end of the day, the world of Iron Man, it kind of ticks all those video game boxes. You want weapons? Yeah. You want generic bad guys to kill? Yes. You want character and story? Yes. You want amazing, beautiful set locations and potential for set pieces in the game? You've got that. You want a wider connected world? You've got the entire Marvel universe. Like, you couldn't really ask for more as a video game developer to be given an IP that just gives you every bit of tool set you want to make a fun, engaging, and fantastic game. So
yeah, I'd want to start off this game feeling like a bit more Tony Stark focus. You're feeling a bit vulnerable because Tony Stark is a very vulnerable man. I mean, in the comics, he's a straight up alcoholic. Mm-hmm. So he is this quite vulnerable, despite having all the wealth known to man. He is quite a vulnerable person. But by the end of the game, I want to be full on power fantasy.
Yeah, which is why most of us play video games, because you get to live out those fantasies in a fictional world. But of course, still a rumour, EA working on games just like last week's Black Panther story. And of course, the reason we bring it to you on a Stadia podcast is because that EA curse was broken. That 5-game curse that Phil Harrison beset upon the Stadia players out there was broken 2 weeks ago by the news that we're getting FIFA 23. So I'm optimistic we will also see Jedi Survivor, which in turn means I'm also optimistic we will see whatever this Black Panther and Iron Man game may be in many, many years to come, as we should say, because this is still rumour and speculation, but more importantly, the games are probably very, very early in development. But
it's proof they're still talking to each other.
Exactly, yeah. Disney have not cut cords since the Star Wars 10-year fiasco anyway, which we knew they already did either way.
I was alluding to Google and EA.
Oh, sorry.
Okay.
Either either, yeah, it all works. But we'll put a pin in that one. Do let us know in the comments below if you would like to see an Iron Man game from EA and maybe your thoughts on what direction they should take it in, because like I said, it's a long ways off, so we'd love to hear what your take is on the adventure that's beholden to everyone. Moving on, we've got some more news from the world of Ubisoft. We seem to touch on Ubisoft quite a lot. There's actually a whole CloudQuest episode available now where me and Richie delve into the world of if Ubisoft and Google would be a great partnership and how it would benefit Google having Ubisoft in their wheelhouse from not only the games industry standpoint, but it would also protect Ubisoft with a bit of Google's financial backing and give them a bit of stability while they kind of figure things out over there. Alas, Richie, that might not be quick enough because it seems to be Tencent, the massive Chinese conglomeration, can't even say that, who have obviously shares in Riot Games and Epic Games and a bunch of other companies around the world. As they delve more into the Western games world, it appears that Tencent look to seek they seek to become the single largest Ubisoft shareholder, according to the latest report from Reuters. They cite a number of sources close to the company with knowledge of ongoing discussions, and they currently own already about a 5% stake in Ubisoft, with the Guillemot family owning another 15% and the remaining 80% being public shareholders. According to the report, Tencent have offered way above the company's current share valuation in order to sweeten the deal, offering around €100 per share, which is close to the company's previous best ever record from 2018. Richie, Ubisoft fought off a hostile takeover from Vivendi back in the day, wanting to remain independent, and the CEO, Yves Guillemot, head of the Guillemot family, also came out in May this year and actually said off the back of it a merger and acquisition from Microsoft and Xbox that they would be open to consider acquisitions, as though they would need to remain independent. So what do you make on Tencent essentially swooping in and offering over the odds to buy more shares in Ubisoft?
Well, the whole Vivendi stuff, the landscape in 2016 of the video game industry was very different than now. So I think at the time, Vivendi were trying to force Yves Guillemot into a sale, force him out of his own company, where over the last year and a half, we've seen the consolidation of the video game industry. Ubisoft is one of them, alongside the likes of EA, who've kind of now admitted that they're not up for sale. That they're one of them last big third-party tentpole game developers who none of the other big players have bought out yet. And with listen to the episode of CloudQuest, I think it's CloudQuest 77, where we're going into detail, but it feels like Ubisoft are prepping for the sale. So this feels a very different situation to Vivendi. This feels almost like Ubisoft are welcoming the approach. Don't know whether it's the welcoming approach outright from Tencent, but the welcoming approaches.
Yeah, I think even back in May when Yves came out and said that they would consider acquisition offers. Bear in mind, this was just a few months after Microsoft announced they were willing to buy Activision Blizzard for $76 billion.
And they go, what? Oh, I could have some of that.
We're for sale, possibly, if your offer is the right amount. Even just half of that, I'm sure any business would take, quite frankly. But obviously, Tencent do have a lot of money as well, a lot of financial backing. But they are linked to the Chinese government as well. Part of the rules over there is that every company is kind of tied to the government in some way, shape or form, for better or worse. And Tencent, of course, putting more investment into Western video game companies. And I think the general negative press is that they like to, or they could potentially, if they want to, implement their own rules and regulations around freedom of speech or what's kind of visualized within games, if they have that kind of pull power within the board. Obviously, very early doors, so we wouldn't take that. And I think Ubisoft and the Guillemot family have usually ushered in Ubisoft kind of sticking to their kind of morals and stuff with their video games and the openness and honesty. And obviously, they've had a lot of problems over the last year or so. Do you think if it went... It's an interesting one, is it? Because we don't really know. As you said, back in 2016, very different world. Ubisoft were at the height, arguably, of the video game market. All of their franchise were firing on all cylinders.
And it's the nature of the Vivendi attempted takeover that it's more problematic. It's almost like, we're going to buy, because Ubisoft is a publicly traded company, 8% of the shares are publicly traded. It's almost like Vivendi just trying to muscle in there. Yeah. Where it's like, hostile, well, no. Yeah, it's the key word in that hostile is hostile. Tencent, I think it's complicated because of the links to the Chinese government, and I'd like to believe the Guillemot family want what's best for Ubisoft. It's their company, they own it, they've grew it. If you put that much time, effort, and emotion into this, growing this thing, regardless what you think of them and their leadership in the last few years, you have to think of them as people. They will want what's best for the company going forward, even if they're not part of it. And that's why I actually wonder if Tencent is having to bid well above the share price, because maybe the Tencent aren't the preferred bidder. Yeah. So it may be to get round the table, Tencent have to blow them out the water. Yeah,
and that's that wouldn't surprise me. Yeah, to kind of gloss aside from any negativity that could come with it, pay more. More money speaks. Remember, like if you're a board shareholder and there's one company offering you higher than the other one, then sometimes it's the easy decision, unfortunately.
I realise it's a very cynical view I've just taken there as well. Basically, like, what I'm saying is, basically claiming is Yves Guillemot's got a price where his morals got the window. Potentially. He's already sold shares to Tencent, so he might not have a big of a... Okay, but I think it's a difference between Tencent being a minority shareholder and the biggest single shareholder.
Yeah. Again, it's all the little... small pieces they've acquired of other companies over the years. And again, that's happening across the board. But as Rob pointed out in talking to PS, we obviously have just a westernized bias to it. I'm influenced by all the journalists over in San Francisco and stuff who are talking about the Chinese government and stuff. And who knows? But it's not really for us to break down on a Google Stadia podcast of all things. But if you do want to go check out CloudQuest 77, did you say? We went really in depth through half an hour of why, if Ubisoft is for sale, why it might be a really smart move for Google Stadia to pick it up and purchase it. So go check that one out if you want a bit more insight into that one.
We have a friend in China. We should ask him one time what his views on Tencent are. Because Tencent aren't just games.
Go check out the headquarters for us. Break in.
Well,
go into the server room.
Tencent are one of the biggest
stick.
companies in China, so they make all the WeChat and stuff. So he's interacted directly with their products, so he might have an interesting insight.
He might do. Yeah, of course, Tencent. There's another CloudQuest episode. We cover a lot of topics on CloudQuest that aren't your traditional ones. It's almost as though we got off the beaten path.
It's almost as if that's what that show is about.
That's what the show is about. But yeah, we also discussed Tencent and cloud gaming because they have a cloud gaming platform. They launched it the same, exactly almost give or take a month around the time Google Stadia launched, but obviously not in the West, and they have games titles on it that aren't available. So go check that out episode as well. But Richie, moving on to other things that are a bit more physical and in person, the Google Store in New York. It only opened a short while ago in Chelsea, New York City, and it opened with a Google Stadia experience bay. Of course, we've seen photos on the internet. They're out there. You've probably seen them yourselves. It features essentially like a portion of the store has some television screens, some showcase shelving, which has essentially the controllers on. There's a big Stadia logo that's backlit, and some fancy-looking, modern, futuristic, kind of uncomfortable chairs, no doubt. And it was reported this week that the Google's retail store in New York apparently has got rid of their Stadia section, which, as you can imagine, the people out there in the world of the internet took that as it's another nail in the coffin of Stadia's ultimate demise. And as someone who spent many years working in retail, and I'm sure many people will have known, retail stores like to change their POS or their point of sale material almost on a weekly basis in a lot of industries and a lot of places. And I'd imagine the Google Store is no different. So my take on this, Richie, is they want to keep the portfolio fresh. They've had a slew of new products come out recently with new Pixel phones. There's Pixel Bud promotions going. There's Chromebooks they're doing a big push for. And maybe they're just rotating it and mixing it up. And Stadia have actually confirmed in a statement, Google have confirmed in a statement since then. Unlike what we saw at the start, Google says the demos are still available at the Chelsea locations on the Chromecast with Google TV demo that sits right next to the store entrance. The TV was turned off when the people from the 9 to 5 Google team were in the store, but we always plan to rotate our sandboxes to show off the diverse utility of Google's products so we can continue to give customers a great in-store experience across all of our hardware. The Stadia controller and Chromecast are still available for purchase at the store, and customers can still play Stadia games at the store as well. So, Richie, is this all just a bunch of fluff just to make it look like Stadia's dying again? Or is it?
I think people are reading too much into the story, to be honest, because I think, again, we've both worked retail. Retail stores do change up the things. The Pixel Buds is what's replaced the Stadia area. And Google, that's a hard push for Google at the moment with the Pixel Buds. It's why you can get some free with the Pixel 6a, because the Apple iBuds or whatever they call them, they're kind of become AirPods. They've become a bit ubiquitous with like wireless earphones. Mm-hmm. I think Google are trying to get into that market, and these are a market for people who don't want Apple products.
Oh,
I own Pixel Buds ears. I think they're great. I bought them out of my own money, so it's not a paid ad for Google. I'm not shilling for Google, but that is kind of one at the moment for what I feel from Google. That's the big product they're pushing at the moment. So it would kind of make sense they want to put some space for that.
Yeah. It's I can see where it's coming from. Part of me also thinks that it's a shame they would get rid of a Stadia section purely because replacing it with, was there not any other space in the store for pixel buds? Because let's face it, how are you going to demonstrate them? Because you can't put them in your ears for health and safety reasons. They're not really on display, so you've got a very odd scenario where I feel like pixel buds, they're tiny little things. Part of me does think you could have just left the Stadia stuff there with the screens and the controllers and allocated maybe another table or a worktop to the pixel buds, because they're not that big.
I completely agree. I'm just trying to put myself in the shoes of Google, and if I was the store manager, let's assume that the Stadia area is the least visited part of the store.
Yeah.
That's where instructions have come down from head office. You need to put up a sandbox for the pixel buds. Where do you put it? Or if you go to which is the least well performing of your sandboxes, that's just business. And as a Stadia fan, it sucks, but I can totally see the Stadia part being loads of people just walking on by.
Yeah, I think the big kind of telling point will be if we get to this time next year and we've had a whole Christmas season and we've had a whole another year of Google Stadia, if it doesn't make a resurgence in that area. Like, again, at some point, I know we've said it time and time again, 150 episodes, 150 weeks of talking about Stadia. At some point, we need to get a controller revision. At some point, we will undoubtedly get maybe like a Chromecast or Premiere Edition. Like, the hardware has to evolve at some point. It might not be now. It might be 3 years down the line. But if it's in rotation in terms of POS, eventually, by that theory, it should make its way back at some point, because that's how marketing is. It goes in cycles. So they're not going to get rid of the product and it never sees the light of day again if they want it to be successful.
You know, one of the revisions I want in the controller, I want it to pair up with my Pixel Buds.
Oh, that's an interesting
one. You know, like if I pull up my Pixel Buds out the case, put them on my ears, it immediately syncs by Bluetooth from my phone. I want that exact same experience with my with my Google Stadia controller. That they can I put them on, I can sync them straight seamlessly to my controller.
Yeah, that would be cool.
Yeah, it's integration with your products with your own products. So that means if in that case, it's more about selling Pixel Buds than Stadia, to be honest, because I'm thinking about buying some new earbuds. I play Stadia. I want some wireless headphones for Stadia. I can just buy Pixel Buds, and I can sync them to my phone. I can sync them to my controller. Done.
It would be cool. I have a pair of Samsung Galaxy Buds, and I love nothing more than when I literally just pop them out, whack them in, and you hear like a little beep, and it's connected to my phone. But that would be epic if you bought a Stadia controller. It came with some Pixel Buds as a promotion. And then, you're right. As soon as you boot up that controller, no matter which device, whether it's on the Chromecast, on a desktop, or on your phone, bleep goes off, and you can have the audio, but it's connected via your Stadia connection, which is in turn linked to the servers, which in turn has the audio coming through. So interesting. But I wouldn't get too concerned with this one. Again, I would be more concerned if in a year's time it hasn't been given another place in the shop.
The fact that they haven't removed Stadia from the store. They've just removed the sandbox. Stadia still does exist there. You can still play Stadia in that store.
Yeah. And that would be no different than you going into your local, Walmart, Asda supermarket, and 1 week it's promoting something in the front of it. Like, seasonal stuff, like barbecue stuff right now, camping equipment. Yeah. That ain't going to be there come winter. So that's the nature of retail stores. So I wouldn't get too hung up on it for now, but we'll keep one eye on this one. Moving on, we got a nice little quick story here following on from the merger between Activision and Blizzard. Richie, touching it briefly in the Ubisoft story. We actually have Google's take on this. So as part of the official responses, the FTC, or the European Commission, kind of overseeing this acquisition and merger of Microsoft acquiring the Call of Duty franchise and all the things under the Activision Blizzard umbrella. And over in Brazil, the communication is very open, and actually the responses from these big tech companies was actually released to the public. And it's interesting just to read through some of the questions. It's a full article. You should go check it out. It's on Reset Era if you want to read the full description. But a bunch of questions were asked about barriers to entry, Xbox Game Pass, distribution of physical and digital media. and breaking it all down. And you got responses from Sony, Warner Brothers, Ubisoft, Bandai Namco, Apple, Riot Games, Amazon. They essentially went to the big tech companies in the world, Meta from Facebook, and basically asked, what does this merger and acquisition mean to you? And I've seen loads of stories this week about Sony being probably the most defensive because they could potentially lose Call of Duty. But interestingly enough, within there, we had Google, and I just want to read out Google's feedback. Google's response to the Activision purchase was, they mentioned the different initiatives from Google, so mini games, VR, Player Pass, developing exclusive games for Stadia until 2021, etc. They mentioned alternatives to Call of Duty could be Battlefield, Counter-Strike, or Rainbow Six. Alternatives to World of Warcraft would be Lost Ark, Elder Scrolls Online, or Guild Wars 2. And alternatives to Candy Crush would be Puzzle Quest or Bejeweled. So that's answering questions around if Call of Duty went exclusive, would the general consumer market miss out?
It's anti-competition rules and stuff,
yeah.
So that's what they're touching on. Like, that's why Google point out these alternatives to these games.
Yeah, it's such a generic response, but again, this is people in a committee essentially trying to overview a merger and acquisition buyout, which might not have any clue about the games industry whatsoever, so they're essentially looking for feedback from equally placed companies if it's that big of a deal. They also went on to highlight the importance of other franchises, such as Overwatch, Diablo, Hearthstone, and possible alternatives. According to Google, Fallout is an alternative to Diablo. Just want to make that clear in there.
Fallout alternative to Diablo?
Yeah, in their responses, that was one of their comparisons when they were talking about IP, so...
I strongly disagree with that, but
well,
okay.
that's the joke. They understand there will be a significant number of game developers and publishers on the market after the acquisition of Activision Blizzard by Microsoft. Was pretty much all we got from Google, but obviously it's interesting they went to Google. Obviously they're probably not going from a Stadia standpoint, they're probably going more from a massive tech corporation standpoint, akin to Microsoft and Amazon and that. And obviously the summary is Sony is the most worked up by this, being their platform, like Call of Duty is on PlayStation. The big tech companies, Google, Meta, Amazon, Apple, don't seem to care that much as far as like the public information is. Google was the only one who actually says that there will be lots of developers and publishers post-transaction. So basically Google pointed out that saying even though they're getting bought, there'll be plenty of other fish out there to make games, so it's not like we're taking half the industry and closing it off to Xbox.
Let's say Call of Duty becomes an Xbox exclusive. Someone will look at the gap it's left in the PlayStation ecosystem and go, well, I will make that game. Yeah. I will fill that. There might become competition to fill that slot.
Yeah,
which
it's going to create a vacuum, definitely. I mean, EA
it could be terrible, it could be good. It's like...
Yeah, EA could finally book their attitude up and put out a decent Battlefield game again, and that could possibly fill that void. But yeah, either way, I just wanted to touch on it just because obviously Google Stadia, and it's very rare that we see them involved in things that don't involve Stadia directly, and a couple of funny things. Diablo and Fallout. How far from the truth that could be. Other things that are part of the truth that we're looking at this week, Richie, is Square Enix reportedly confirmed it's looking to sell its stakes in its studio. So we've touched on this a few months back when the Embracer Group paid $300 million to acquire some studios, Crystal Dynamics, Square Enix, Adios Montreal, and alongside the Deus Ex, Tomb Raider franchise, Thief, and a couple of other smaller IP. It looks like, according to Japanese-based analyst David Gibson, that the Phase 2 of the Square Enix diversification has struck, and they are looking to, and I quote, diversify their studio's capital structure. With rising development costs and making games means 100% owned studios need to be selective and concentrate resources, which limits their expansion. They're doing a studio portfolio review, and some studios will remain 100% while others will change via either an equity method or a joint venture. They'll also look to expand the studio's portfolio. According to the report, the biggest impact was the EU and US studios split around large titles, and changes mean Square Enix will be able to allocate resources mainly to its Japanese titles. So essentially, they're looking to sell stakes in the studios or otherwise improve capital with investment. Buyers rumoured to be expected are Sony, Tencent, Nexon, and a couple of others. But we kind of guesstimated this a little while back, Richie, during the Embracer Group merger, that they're possibly streamlining the business for an upcoming sale.
Yeah,
no surprise
I'm not
here?
confident. No surprise. I think less confident that they're actually streamlining for a straight up sale now. It feels like what they're doing is they're trying to consolidate back into. When you think of Square Enix, I think most people's minds go straight to a JRPG, very Japanese focused games. Mm-hmm. It feels like that's where they see we're going to move back into that space, and we've been trying to expand to the Western market, into the EU, into the US, into the UK, by making more Western style games, and some have worked, some haven't. I think Avengers is probably the one that has kind of probably not met expectations the most. Yeah. Oddly, I think Tomb Raider has been one of the better successes, both from Crystal Dynamics. So,
well, that's it. You've got those two, and then you've got Adios, who just put out Guardians of the Galaxy. So, funnily enough, in my mind, because as someone who doesn't play the Final Fantasy games, the last few large games for me, I really enjoyed Avengers. I loved Guardians of the Galaxy, and I enjoyed all 3 Tomb Raider games. So, for me, them moving away to Embracer Group, it doesn't really impact me that much. But the fact Square Enix are like actively looking to just be acquired or bought up or looking for more capital investment, and I'm sure we've seen that because like look at the next Final Fantasy. I think the next 2 are PlayStation exclusive, which obviously means they've got a great relationship with Sony and PlayStation, which makes me think that they'd probably go for it. But I guess the big question that comes back to it is, do you think this is an opportunity for Google to invest and say, well, look, if you want some capital investment, as long as you bring the game to Stadia, we'll throw you a couple of bucks.
I mean, for me, if I'm Google and I want to be involved in the gaming industry, both like Square and Ubisoft and other companies like that who might be up for sale, I'd be investing in them, because putting Stadia aside, I think this could be lucrative for Google. Just for Google, even if they're not going, this is going to be a Stadia exclusive, they're going, I don't know, maybe they're going to go pick a Square Enix studio that is one of them ones that's up for potentially a joint venture. Mm-hmm. Maybe they buy 30%, a 30% stake in it. Yeah. And then the game, with the stipulation that the game has to come to Stadia. Yeah. And then they get, but it's still going to be cross-platform, and it just means they get a cut of the they get a 30% cut of the profits.
Yeah, it goes back to our Ubisoft CloudQuest acquisition conversation, saying it's a win-win. Like, if
it's
Google,
a Tencent approach, like I'm suggesting for Google, basically. Buy bits.
Completely. Like, why buy the cow when you can have the milk for a smaller percentage? And it is that case where, you invest 30% in this game, and the game comes to your platform, and if the game sells well, you get profits off the back of that. It's almost a safer way of doing it rather than investing in your own studios, which we know they don't want to do anymore.
Yeah, I think it's probably a smarter strategy is by investing in other studios, basically what Tencent have been doing, and what Embracer Group has been doing a bit of as well. Invest in these studios on the stipulation, we'll front some cash, the games come to us, as well as wherever else you want to put them, and then you get a cut of the revenue, and then you've got studios. It's a lot easier to buy. I think it's probably a lot easier and cheaper to buy a studio than it is to build one. Because if you buy a studio, if Crystal Dynamics, let's say Google bought them instead of Embracer, they've got a studio there that's ready to go. They've been making great games for years. Mm-hmm. The team's already established. They know what they're doing. They've put games out on Stadia. That's a very different proposition to going to Jade Raymond. We want you to basically build a publishing and game and development studio
from scratch.
Here's some money, go from scratch, and then and then when it's costing a lot of money and you haven't made enough progress because you're basically you're building from nothing. It's why I still think Google buying Ubisoft is a smart move.
It does make you wonder, doesn't it, when you look back and think like, what was your plan? Like, why did you want to make your own studio from scratch when you're right, Richie, for the amount of investment and effort they put into getting SG and G off the ground, SG and E, not G, off the ground, you'd imagine it was probably a good couple $100 million to get everything set up. Whereas, you're right, if you just could drop $300 million and not only acquire 2 phenomenal studios and talent, but also Tomb Raider and Deus Ex and Thief and Legacy of Kain.
If I was appointed to be head of Stadia and I basically had a blank check, I'd resurrect Stadia Games and Entertainment as a publisher, not as a developer. So then you can use that to, we know Square like to, like, Square don't care about exclusives. That if you throw them a bag of cash, they'll make an exclusive for you.
Looking at you,
and that could be published by Stadia Games and Entertainment. Mm-hmm. And in the future, you can then start building your own development studios. Maybe you start small, making indie-style titles, and let them grow naturally while investing in other studios and publishing games.
Yeah, it's an interesting take. It's who knows what the hell's going on at Square Enix. Like I cannot comprehend a business that has such successful IP in studios going, we're not making as much money as we wanted to with these. Let's streamline. Get rid of some of our most beloved IP for a discount bargain bin price. Like Embracer Group buying those for 300 million was bargain of the century, and now they're looking to expand, but also trim down at the same time. So looking for investment, but I think they're a bit confused with what they really want to do. It seems weird.
Yeah, I think the JRPGs and Japanese style games are becoming more common in the West anyway. So I think Square are looking at that trend and going, well, we can just double down on what we do well already, where some of the Western stuff can be hit or miss. But I think part of it is by getting rid of the Western studios, they can take that money, invest it into more Japanese style games. And the only thing I can think of is if there is a clear disparity between the profitability between the two styles of game. Yeah. If they're Japanese style games, a lot significantly more profitable than the Western style ones. If you're a business person looking at the numbers going, why are we investing so much money here when if we take that money, invest it over here, we'll get a bigger return? That's what it feels like they're doing.
It does to a degree, but then reading the rest of the Video Games Chronicle article, later last month, Square Enix also indicated that they intend to establish and or acquire new game studios, which suggests the studio intends to pursue a different direction in line with its Japanese goals. And the president of Square Enix stated in April that the company's Japanese studios shouldn't try to make games aimed specifically at Western players.
Yeah, I think they're just doubling down on making Japanese-style games. They're not going to go, we're not going to make games for the West because Japanese-style games are getting more and more accepted, more and more played in the West. So if that trend holds, we'll just double down on Japanese-style games and they'll make their way over the West anyway.
Yeah, but I don't know. I think in my mind, I picture
it feels a bit confused.
I just picture a globalized world where, because you have a studio that's based in Canada or America or Europe.
Yeah.
I don't understand why that's bad with your portfolio. We need Japanese games. We need to focus on our kind of portfolio of Japanese style. It's like, okay,
that's
but
the
if
only...
you've got a team of artists and developers who are skilled in their craft and they're not putting out bad games, you see them as a bad look for your company to a point where you're willing to sell them at a discount price to streamline and even start from scratch. We just said about how Stadia did bad because they tried to start from scratch. So what they're looking to do, acquire like Platinum Games or something because they're based in Japan? Like, it's such an odd way of looking at a business structure.
I don't know. The only thing that's why the only reason I can think of is there must be some sort of disparity in terms of profitability. Yeah. So because they might be looking, well, this is profitable, but we feel like that money that goes into there could be more profitable elsewhere.
Yeah, definitely. But we'll have to wait and find out what the hell is going on at Square Enix. I wouldn't be surprised if by the end of the year they've been bought out by someone. I know the big rumour is PlayStation, just down to the sheer Final Fantasy output that Square Enix do for PlayStation. Yeah. It seems like almost a match made in heaven. Sony, Japanese
I'd be okay
company.
With it.
Yeah, I think most people would. Obviously, not anyone if they go exclusive, but it's hard to argue when most of them are exclusive anyway. So,
yeah.
What are you going to do? Off the back of that little story there, we also had some interesting Tomb Raider news come out this week. Of course, we've got many, many Tomb Raider titles over on Google Stadia. Many have been pro games, in fact. The next reboot, which is now being led by the Embracer Group and Crystal Dynamics, Square Enix, this old company, possibly Adios Montreal. We don't know who's going to take the mantle quite yet. Actually, we do. Scratch that. It's Crystal, they said. If that stays the same, we'll have to wait and find out, I guess. In terms of the next Tomb Raider game, though, the script audition readings leaked this week, and over on the Sacred Symbols PlayStation podcast, they actually read through the script. The guys on the podcast, they did some terrible British accents, Richie, in a very Cockney-inspired way. which I don't class as a British accent. I mean, it's a British accent, but you know what I mean. I don't think of it as an English accent per se, because I sound nothing like them, Gavna.
Yeah, there isn't one British accent, as some people seem to think there is.
Yes, but either way, they are looking to, according to casting notes from the script, the project is looking to cast an authentic British actress. I can't even speak English now. Ironically, in her mid-30s, in the prototype of an Emily Blunt or Rosamund Pike, and the role will involve romantic scenes with another female character. Lara Croft is now at the top of her game. The alleged script reads, "Gone are the days of the young, inexperienced woman dealing with matters of legacy and family reckoning. Lara has let go of her childhood and fully embraced the life of an adventurer. Her legendary career has now been lauded and printed in tabloids, tales of adventure that have inspired a new generation of Tomb Raiders to seek their fortunes in the world. With this new phase of her life, Lara fully accepts her place among the ruins. For many years, Lara plunged the depths of forgotten places, played cat and mouse with many nefarious opponents, and worked to uncover, preserve, and protect the lost secrets of the world, lest they fall into wrong hands." The script describes what appears to be a team set up for the new Tomb Raider game, which would see multiple characters involved in the core gameplay. Additional Tomb Raiders have speaking roles in the alleged script, including characters Devendra and Tanvi. As the years have passed, Lara has become lonely at the top. The story synopsis continues. The beginning of the next chapter presents Lara with a quintessential adult problem, facing something too big to handle alone. On this new adventure, Lara will encounter a challenge she can only overcome with a team at her side. Collaboration is foreign to her. She's always succeeded alone, so in this situation, she's a fish out of water. How does that read to you, Richie, as a Tomb Raider? We don't know if it's a full reboot, although it looks like they are recasting the main character, looking for a different voice actress to come in. It was Camilla Luddington who did it for the fantastic reboots from 2013 onwards. I'm a big fan of Tomb Raider games. What do you think of this reboot? Is a team of Lara Crofts, a team of Tomb Raiders out there? What do you think?
I don't know. I mean, is this a continuation of the series with a new voice actress? Is it a complete reboot? It really
it's a leaked
depends.
Script at this point.
The idea of a team where if you're playing multiple characters, I'm not overly fond of. I don't mind having if they were going like the partner character, similar to like The Last of Us, because it could be an interesting story to tell. But it feels like if you're going to do like this is going to be the end of the 3 games that we've just had, we're going to do one more to kind of close off that character's arc. It feels like you wouldn't want to recast.
Yeah, I mentioned on Talking the PS that I'm a massive fan of the trilogy reboot, and I think the design of Lara is fantastic. It got rid of some of the quirky tropes of the older PlayStation 1 generation games, to say the least, but she is a realised...
The polygons.
Yeah, she is a realised human being, treasure hunter, adventure seeker, out there in the world. And even at the end of the last game, Shadow of the Tomb Raider, there was very much more story to tell. She was still a young woman finding her feet out there in the world of adventure. She had a cast of characters. There was Jonah and a couple of others that never managed to come back, Sam and the like. And I just think rebooting it so soon with, like, what's she going to do? How different is she really going to look? And is it necessary to throw away the three games of legacy in the scope of doing something new? Like, I know they say she's an older adventurer, so maybe they're just going to do an age jump where the last decade has happened and we're now picking up with Lara a decade, 2 decades later.
It feels they're reaching for the Uncharted 4 moment where they're going, you know what, we're going to retire Nathan Drake. But that was largely done because Naughty Dog wanted to move on to do something different. Yeah.
And his story
You've just got this, and it feels his story been told. It feels like there's more story that you could tell for this character. I mean, there's probably more you could have done with Nathan Drake if you wanted to.
Oh yeah, definitely. But the kind of conclusion of the characters, making a team, it sounds like this. I feel like they're getting ideas from the way the landscape of the industry is now, and quite frankly, that's not what I want a Tomb Raider game to be. I don't want online multiplayer to come into it. I don't want to jump between different characters who aren't Lara. They're great, like you said, as side characters. I'm sure I'll fall in love with them and I'll understand their emotions and the reasons to being there. But I want to play a Tomb Raider great game as Lara. Whether she's old or she's young, she's experienced or inexperienced, it's not Tomb Raider.
It feels like, with... The difference with Uncharted is as well, you have Elena throughout the entire series, and their relationship between Nate and Elena progresses. So when you start 4 and he's basically now just a guy working a job, and he's got with his wife. It's like
Spoilers.
it feels like that's how his life would have went.
Yeah.
With Lara, it feels like her life has been pushing her to become this Tomb Raider character, and now we're going to gloss over all the years of like peak activity to just retire her. Yeah, to retire her.
Like all the stories that need to be told. It's not like a real life movie counterpart when she needs to be aged and grow up. It's like it's a video game, so she could just be as young as the day you left her on the end of the last game. And I don't want to play through this title and they end up going, oh, remember that time in Taiwan, or remember that time when we went to Baghdad or something. Like, let me play through them stories. Like, let me explore those ruins. I don't want to just hear them about in a flashback.
I like how they're going, like, she's no longer this inexperienced young woman dealing with the matters of legacy and family reckoning. I like that they're moving her from that, but it feels like you should be starting a new arc of her as, like, I'm now this established thing in the world. Tomb raiding is just what I do now. Mm-hmm. But I want to see a few stories for that Lara before we go into the whole, right, it's time for me to start thinking about hanging up my dual pistols. Yeah,
I mean, yeah, exactly. But again, this is only an alleged script leak. It goes on to talk about the way they would interact with the other characters, the two named ones in the article, and it's obviously very early doors if they're just doing like auditions for voice acting and stuff, but we shall see the direction of Lara. It's a shame they did nothing for the anniversary. I do feel like we're probably due a new game some point now, but obviously the team got shifted onto the Avengers title, so...
And then I think there was the whole like Crystal potentially getting bought out. That's probably put a spanner in the works.
Well, yeah, you'd imagine there was lots of concept art ready, but either way, we'll wait and find out. Next story of the week, one game we also will wait and find out about. We didn't actually expect to be covering on this week, but there was a Forbes article dropped on August the 4th regarding Madden23. Now, we do know we're getting FIFA 23. It was confirmed. It's up for pre-order now in the Stadia store. But obviously, fans of the NFL sport, of course, amazing John Madden being the cover star for this year's box art, or virtual box art, whatever it may be. And we kind of just presumed it wasn't coming because we've not heard anything from it. Yet there's a Forbes article answering just kind of Q&A. So the most asked questions, and EA answers fans' feedback after an extended beta period. And the article starts, Richie, with Madden NFL 23 will release across multiple platforms, PS4, PS5, Xbox One, Series S and X, Google Stadia and PC on August 16th. So, Forbes, very reputable news website.
Yeah.
And we've obviously heard not a peep about it, but in a nutshell, obviously you and me don't really know anything there is to know about NFL, but I'm sure our American viewers and listeners out there would absolutely love for this to drop. Just as excited we were for FIFA being announced as coming. It's a little bit late in the game, but do you think Madden could make an appearance on Google Stadia?
I suppose it's possible, but it's very much an 11th hour considering in June that we heard that it wasn't coming.
Well, the pre-orders went up in July, so pre-orders only went up back end of last month.
Yeah, I mean, a 9 to 5 article in June, 3rd of June 2023 is 2022. Sorry, Madden 23 is not coming to Stadia, and that was apparently from a source at EA.
Mixed conversation then. So
I wonder whether is this just a typo of what, like when they've been writing it, they just copied the platform from the previous version or something, or is this like a new press release?
Yeah, you never know where the sources, like when they write up these articles, you never really know where the sources are from. Obviously, this is from an EA fans feedback page, so the article kind of goes on to say like Q&A basically of like some of the features that have changed, some of the improvements. The field sense motion control that's been added in, gameplay changes and stuff to career mode. And yeah, EA notes they've added 27 new hit animations, etc. So it goes on to kind of give an in-depth analysis of what the beta's been like. And I just think, somewhere this news reporter had to get the platforms it's coming out to for their article. And I'm wondering, like, did they go for an EA press release? Did they go for a direct from EA? Did they get the information from them? And we just never really know. But like I said, Forbes, they're not just a random website. And as the date creeps closer, you know what? I would have wrote this off if we knew we weren't getting FIFA. But now we know that 5-game curse is broke, as we mentioned at the beginning of the show with Iron Man. I think there could be a Madden in the works. I just think it might be maybe a bit behind schedule, and that's why they've not mentioned it yet. Or they might be saving it for an epic promotion.
It's entirely possible, like in June, when 9 to 5 reported on it, that was the correct information, and now Forbes are also announcing the correct information.
Yeah,
it's entirely possible, like Stadia went, you know what, we need to get this game.
Yeah, I mean, remember, we didn't know anything about FIFA until like the latest trailer just before pre-orders went live, so we might not hear about this one until just before the game comes out in August.
Yeah, it might have been a last-minute deal, and the EA went, and it's like, it feels very 11th hour because the game comes out in 2 weeks from recording.
Definitely. But again, it's a huge get, and I very much believe, just like the previous versions of Madden, it belongs on Stadia. I think it'll do wonders for the platform and in terms of its credibility. But maybe they had a choice of FIFA or Madden, and they had put their eggs in one basket.
We might hear about this tomorrow if they drop a next up on Stadia.
We might, but we'll have to wait and find out.
I don't know.
It's all speculation. We have no more news again, but our fingers are crossed for our American football fans out there. Moving on. Actually, in line with the EA news, I should probably mention as well. Need for Speed. EA actually confirmed this week that Need for Speed will be coming Q3 of 2022. So again, kind of keeping with the EA news. We've not had an EA game on Google Stadia yet, but
in Need for Speed, we have an EA game.
Damn it, website. Apologies, audio. Did you hear that? You wouldn't have heard that, would you?
No.
I hate websites that launch ads and it just start talking about something. So, audio listeners, he was trying to sell us something, but I've closed the window now. So
it shouldn't be on the recording anyway. So,
I mean, it'd be picked up by my audio, won't it?
No, because you'll be using my audio that I'm recording here and your audio.
Either way, that awkward, weird pause that just happened.
A bit behind-the-scenes information for you guys who have been here for an hour.
I was just trying to open up an article that said Need for Speed is still coming, and then it booted into some stupid advert for... It's probably going to do it again in a second. I know he's muted this time. The Daily Distraction, ironically enough, he's telling me about the Flash on the CW show being cancelled after season 9. Great. Run, Barry, run. Either way...
I just mute sites all the time now.
I mean, I have them muted, but for some reason I must have hovered over like something and triggered it. Either way, if you didn't already know, we've got a booster show lined up to celebrate 150 episodes, Richie. We're going long on this one, back to the old days. Need for Speed game is still on track for release this year, per a new release slate from EA. Which again kind of leads credence to the Madden story, don't you think? That the fact EA coming out and actively updating us about games, and they've came out this week and said that they've put out a press slate basically saying Need for Speed is coming this year, and they've also updated us on Battlefield 2042. There's a Forbes article about Madden's release date that includes Stadia, so I feel like EA Press are coming out and actually giving information, so...
Yeah, maybe they're ready to start.
Yeah.
I think it feels like they've held the cards close to the chest, now they're ready to start playing them.
Well, remember, they didn't have an EA Player this year. They specifically said they were going to wait to tell news stories, so... read into that what you will. Either way, though, the next Need for Speed game is on track, as I said. EA obviously put a pause on the Need for Speed games because Criterion, the developers, were pulled off of Need for Speed to go help out with one Battlefield 2042, which obviously
did not work well.
Battlefield 2042. Maybe it'll be fixed and sorted by the year 2042, Richie, when Call of Duty is an Xbox exclusive and Battlefield is just fighting it out on PlayStation and other platforms. Maybe we'll even get it on Google Stadia. Remember when everyone cared about it coming last year, rumoured, myself included, until I found out it didn't have a campaign, and then I couldn't give two shits about it at all because I am paying £70 for a game that does not have a campaign in today's world, as an old man who only plays single-player games. But I digress. Need for Speed is a single-player game. I've got a lot of affection for the Need for Speed franchise, and I would certainly pick it up if it came to Google Stadia. Reportedly titled Need for Speed Unbound. It's going to be a new retelling of the game featuring around a hub world. It's going to have expansive multiplayer mode, exploring a city, teaming up for races on dynamic tracks, and a bunch of like classic tropes with Need for Speed. Customize your vehicles, nitrous oxide and LEDs galore. But yes, surprisingly, that again, Richie, we're in the middle of August now, and we've not heard a peep we've not actually visually seen anything about this game. It's all still rumours, and yet it's due to come out in Q3. So imminently, what's Q3? December, November, and October.
Close. Probably
cutting it close. So yeah, nice little bit of a reaffirmation there. But I tell you what, we have had reaffirmation for, and that is Talking Dogs. We need to talk about Talking Dogs, Richie. We do, because the developer,
which one?
Carson Kelly, does not stop talking about Talking Dogs. So reading actually from Carson Kelly Games website, CarsonKellyGames.com. That's hard to say. Those who are familiar, we covered Talking Dogs on the show a few weeks back, because Talking Dogs got a brief trailer drop, didn't show much gameplay. I was a bit lukewarm on it because the trailer literally was a kind of panning shot of a animated world. It didn't, and then a dog was sat there at the end of the trailer. It didn't actually show or tell us anything about what the game was. Well, they've been busy over at the world of Carson Kelly Games, which, as far as I'm aware, it's one developer. Right, it's one guy. I'm not going crazy on that front, and
I believe so. I might be wrong, but I believe so.
I'm gonna just pull up his Twitter, because essentially we know he's big on Google Stadia, getting the game ported across. He's tweeted out about Talking Dogs a few times. Carson Kelly Games LLC, with 537 followers on Twitter. Spoke about Talking Dogs, giving us a quick update. He appreciates all the messages of support. He's done appearances on our good friend John Scar's YouTube channel, 4Scar Gaming, doing an interview discussing the development update for the game in episode 51. But since then, he's also announced Talking Dogs 2 will be coming in 2026. And then, before that dust had even settled, Talking Dogs 3 has also been announced over on Twitter as well. So this game is coming to PlayStation 5 and Google Stadia. The first game, Talking Dogs, on June 30th. Available on June 30th. 2023, sorry, I'm not reading the air.
Yeah.
I was going to getting confused then. So next summer, it's going to be out. And now, according to the website, as I said, Talking Dog 3, working title. A message from CEO Carson Kelly. Good morning. Today is a very, very beautiful day for Carson Kelly Games. A series of announcements and updates from both current and newly announced titles were shared with you, the community, and this is no different than the other announcements made today. As well, as you see above, it's official that I am in fact working on the third and final Talking Dogs game, Talking Dogs 3. It's currently in pre-production stages. I will also be sharing more details in the far future with you. I would also like to confirm that the trilogy for Walking Dogs is set to complete with the final entry in the mainline series with Talking Dogs 3, which is recurrently, sure that's just meant to be recently, and in pre-production. It's the same thing I'm reading, isn't it? Development cycle, nothing major will be shared today on Talking Dogs 3, but I would love to show you the unofficial poster and logo for Talking Dogs 3, which is subject to change come release in the far future. Here's your first look at Phil the Husky and some friends in Talking Dogs 3's working title. And the official poster is literally just a giant 3. And there's some stills from pre-production, which they're definitely assets running in Unreal Engine, I would guess, with Phil the Husky. And the closing message is, thanks for joining us. And really, Richie, I don't want to spend too long on this. Look, we've got Talking Dogs 2 coming holiday 2026. Bear in mind, folks, it is 2022. The first game isn't out for another year, and all I've seen of this is a few still images, a dog in Unreal Engine, presumably, and a couple of panning shots of some landscape. What's going on with Talking Dogs? Because I don't want to be disrespectful to the developer, but this just seems to be getting crazy out of hand. 3 games announced before you've even put out your first one. What is going on over at Talking Dogs?
I have no idea. It seems an odd move to announce the second game and the third game before your first game is even close to coming out. Because, I mean, he's taking a big risk, to be honest, working on games 2 and 3 while still working on 1. Because if 1 comes out and flops massively, that could be it. That could be his studio done.
I just think it's getting it's running before you can walk. Is the way I look at it. And nothing I've seen yet really entices me into playing this game. And again, I don't want to try and dissuade indie developers, but just maybe focus on one project at a time, I would say.
Yeah, it feels like he's enamored with his project, but maybe have lost sight of it a bit. Where he's clearly ambitious.
Oh, that's definitely obvious. Nothing wrong with that.
Maybe he needs to probably rein that in a bit. Focus on getting the first game done, getting his vision down, polishing up to the best he possibly can, putting it out in the world, and seeing what the feedback is before, like, planting his flag in what the second and third games are going to be.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know.
Well, if anything,
I don't know him. I don't know. So
Google
I might be
Stadia is going to be alive until 2026 and beyond. At this point, right? Bear in mind,
I wouldn't peg Google Stadia on Talking Dogs.
No, but bear in mind, as reading from the Twitter post as well, just announced a Carson Kelly production presents a Carson Kelly game, Talking Dogs Jack Story, a 2D/3D mobile game coming spring 2024 to Apple and Android. You play as Jack the Bull Terrier, which is, again, the same kind of font, bringing us another Carson Kelly game. So that's 4 games in the works based on this Talking Dogs franchise MCU world that we've seen so far.
We'll see what comes of it.
We certainly will. I definitely want to check this out and just see more about what it is. But yeah, I think I'm just a bit baffled by it all. I think being hit with like a game that's coming out, great, wonderful, get your game on as many places as possible. Love to support indie developers, but then a 2 and a 3 and a spin-off mobile game coming in 5, 6, 7 years is very, very ambitious, to say the least. So Carson, good on you. Keep doing what you're doing. But yeah, let's see the first one first.
Yeah.
Right, moving on, Richie. Final few stories. Let's get Talking Dogs moving on. LG partners with Google to offer 3 months of Stadia Pro. If you are out there and you own an LG TV with all the smart tech, I think it has to be on anything over Web OS 5 or higher, according to the LG press release. Simply go to the LG content store and have a look for Stadia. You'll probably see it across the main banner page where there's like Apple TV and a bunch of other apps basically there for download. And you can claim 3 months Stadia Pro just for having an LG TV. It works across any country Stadia is available in. And I can confirm it works because I just claimed 3 months myself. So on the back of... Richie, did you do the Lenovo promotion?
Yeah.
So we got... Was it 9 months free with Lenovo? I believe.
It wasn't
5
9,
or
was
6
it?
months maybe?
A
lot of months. I haven't paid for Stadia
I haven't
Pro
paid in a while.
a lot of months. And I was able to stack this on top of it. So my Stadia Pro runs now until the back end of December, which I don't think I've paid for Stadia Pro this year. I mean, I feel bad not giving money to Stadia. Like, they're missing out on £10 every month because of these promotions from me. But... you know what? It's there. I got the code on the TV. I went to the... Again, you can't redeem codes through mobile, so I had to go on the desktop version to find the redeem option in the menu. I did spend some time on the mobile app scrolling through going, where the hell? Where is the redeem code option in this account? It's here somewhere. And then after a while, a penny dropped, and I thought, oh, is this one of them? It's only available on desktop things. And it was. Redeem it on desktop mode, ladies and gentlemen. But 3 months for LG owners. No doubt we'll probably see similar things for the Samsung Gaming Hub models and future Hisense versions. But yes, if you have an LG TV out there, go get claiming. I did check on my other TV in the other living room to see if I had 2 codes. Yeah. That one was a year older than the one in here, so no can do. It looks like it's recent models only. Final few stories to round out this poker wrap, Richie. Life is Strange developers can't imagine going back to an episodic release model anytime soon. True Colours was the first step away from the episodic format, of course. Anyone who played Life is Strange True Colours, there's a full playthrough series available on the channel, right? You and me jumped on, played through. Great little game. We had a great time playing through and enjoying Alex Chen's story. I don't know where I pulled that name from. out my ass. I would just remember a full name just like that. Life is Strange True Colors was the first game in the series to be released with a full package, side-skipping the episodic release format that the franchise is built on, and now the developers can't imagine going back. So during an interview on Rock Paper Shotgun, senior narrative designer Philip Lawrence explained the team always want to try something different with Life is Strange's follow-up sequel True Colors, and it did just that, and it was released in 2021, etc., etc. I won't go into the details of the story because we all know about Life is Strange, but any surprise, Richie?
No. I mean, I like the episodic nature of some games, but I don't like the episodic release because when you're waiting months on end to watch... Imagine if you're watching a TV show, you watch the first episode, and then you get told the next episode's going to be out in 3 months.
Yeah.
You're going to lose interest, and that's the problem where I think if you're going to build the game episodic, just release it when it's done.
Indeed. But great games, the Life is Strange games. We have a fondness for all of the entries, I think, pretty much. Mostly Life is Strange, True Colors, and the first one, the original one. And no surprise, episodic doesn't really work in the video games well due to the nature of how long it takes to get them out and polish them and complete them. And you're right, you lose that engagement factor. So no surprise, but I'm hoping we'll see something new in the Life is Strange world. Or maybe even some DLC for True Colors in the imminent future. But if not, available now on Google Stadia. I think it was actually on offer or sale at some point over the last few weeks. So go check it out. And the final story of this extended Sounds of Stadia podcast episode is one of the Twitch streamer over in the world of the internet has been playing Destiny 2, and he's been utilising Stadia in a very special way. So reading from PC Gamer, we have a Destiny 2 streamer who's essentially grinding an endless loop for new gear, which we know can be quite hard in a games as a service title. Reading through the description in the PC Gamer article, it's interesting to see, but essentially, Lucky Struck 9, which is his gamer tag online, usually jumps into the Discord and teams up with other people to run checkpoints in Destiny, which accrues you abilities to get perks and points. I don't really know. I don't play Destiny to that point. Apologies if I'm getting the terminology wrong, everyone. Originally, he was using his main account to run checkpoints, but then he says, I eventually decided to make an alternate account, which I ran on a gaming laptop, to hold a single checkpoint while I could go in and do it with another account, which became ideal with Google Stadia. So what he does now is he maintains 11 Stadia accounts running on a single desktop with a very basic processor, minimal RAM and no graphics card. And because of the way Stadia works, naturally you can have multiple instances running at the same time because all the power is done on Stadia's end. The way I read this, Richie, correct me if I'm wrong, is that he's basically using 11 versions of himself to run the grind to gather the points, where normally you would need a team or a lot more time on your hands to be able to do this. Am I right, or am I going
pretty
crazy?
much. Yeah, by the sounds of it, what he's done is he's recorded a macro of how to do this objective that he's doing, and then has that play out 11 times, basically using different accounts.
And it doesn't obviously have any extra stress on his computer because all the power's done from Stadia's end.
I mean, it's worth pointing out, you said it's modest, but it's nice that he's got an i7 7700K, which is fair. It's a bit old now, but it's fairly decent. And 32 gigs of RAM isn't not to be sniffed at.
No graphics card.
But, yeah, no graphics card. Because you don't need it.
Do you not? Do you not need a graphics card to run games?
Not to play Stadia, you don't.
No, but I'm just saying in general, like, he's still able to run 11 instances of Destiny without a graphics card, which if you told someone on the high street who wasn't aware of cloud gaming, I would just default be like, no graphics card.
Now, I'd assume if you had 11 game streams up at the same time, it'd look fairly crappy. Mm-hmm. But if you're just running macro to play the game for you, why would you care?
Yeah, you don't care.
Yeah.
But either way, it's an interesting shortcut. It no doubt breaches Bungie's terms of service to some degree, but you know what? You get your grind in while you want, my friend. You play Destiny to your heart's content with 11 different variations. So good luck to Luckstruck 9 over in the world of Destiny. I'm sure Bungie won't be chasing after you anytime soon. But shout out to Google Stadia for allowing it to happen, because he would need 11 crazy PCs to make that happen in a normal world. Right. That is it, Richie. That is the last news story of the week. 150 stories or more to see. To be a Sounds of Stadia master is everyone's destiny right here. Play the song. I'm joking. Thank you to everyone who's tuned in for this week's wonderful episode of the Sounds of Stadia podcast, your longest running, and in fact, probably longest episode in a long, long time of your weekly Stadia podcast show. All rounded up, compressed into one beautiful podcast available on youtube.com/Helix Cloud Games, and up there in the digital cloud on your podcast preference of choice. I'm going to go away and play some games. I'm actually going on holiday, Richie. Funnily enough, we've not mentioned it throughout the whole podcast, but I'm not here for the first time ever for next week's show, episode 151. I've made it to 150. I'm out. That's it. Yeah. That's my fuel exhausted. No, in reality, we've obviously been through lockdown and such for a long, long time, so it's allowed us to keep this consistent run going. The show will still be here. We should point that out. Yep. Richie is not going anywhere. He's going to still be here. And he's going to be joined by...
We're not allowed to take time off together.
We're not allowed any more time off together, as we mentioned on last week's Talking the PS episode. But essentially... Richie's going to be holding down the fort, representing Team Stadia. He's going to be joined by our lovely co-host, Rob, from the Talking the PS podcast. So you guys are familiar with Rob by now, to bring you all the Stadia goodness. So never fear. Episode 151 will be going up on all the same channels at all the same times. I'll be listening along for the first time. I'll hear all my news through Richie, because I'm going to try and actually switch off from the digital world. I'm going to France for a week or so with the wife.
You're going to switch off from the digital world, apart from to make sure I'm keeping track of the podcast.
I may check my phone to make sure things are scheduled right and on time. But you know what? If they don't, what's the worst that's going to happen? I trust you completely. And I trust our audience will give Rob a warm welcome. It is his first appearance on the Sounds of Stadia podcast. But again, we just want to make sure that we're here for you, rounding it all up. So thank you to everyone who does tune in, who does listen along, who's been with us from the beginning, of course. 150 episodes, no mean feat, but we've done it. And it's a big thing, Richie. I actually think if my calculations are correct, the wonderful Bill and Lloyd put their Stadia Cast show on hiatus at episode 151. So as of next week, when you're holding the fort down, we'll match them for actual episodes put out. So I know we say we're the longest running, and that's because consistently we are, but you know what? Big boots to fill there, Richie. So good luck. Yeah. For episode 151. Plenty of news, of course.
It'll be fine. It's not like I'm new to the podcast.
That is true.
I have never hosted Sounds of Stadia, though.
Oh, well. There we go.
You have. Tom has. I haven't.
That is very, very true. Ever rotating cast, of course. We look forward to all that. I look forward to listening and viewing. I'll be in the comments. I'll drop a comment in for you to show that I'm checking out. Fair. I want to try and be first. See if anyone can beat me to be first. But that is all the news stories we have this week. Thank you to everyone who stuck along with us. Don't forget to like the video, subscribe, and hit that bell so you're kept in the loop with all of our amazing content. We do have a live stream going up this week as well. Check that out. It's available now. I'm going to go sun myself in France and Disneyland and Paris. Probably drink far too much wine, but you know what? That's what holidays are for. I'll see you when I'm back. My name's been Chris.
I've been Richie.
We've been the Helix Cloud Games boys, bringing you 150 episodes of the Sounds of Stadia podcast. Take care, folks. Have a great week. And remember, play whatever makes you the happiest. Goodbye.
Bye.